out some of these other shows. Visit darkmist.org for the full directory. That being said, nothing about Into the Fray will change. This is just another way for me to hopefully help get the show out across to more ears. I recently did an unboxing video of the July Cryptid Crate. You can visit intothefrayradio.com to view exactly what came in my July Cryptid Crate. And of course, go to cryptidcrate.com to get your own. The ticket giveaway to the upcoming CryptidCon is still happening. Be entered to win by sharing any CryptidCon post. Make sure to tag me in said post. That way you can be entered to win the drawing to get free tickets to this event. Doing a big wave of recordings coming up for Into the Fray: Richard Freeman, Johnny Hauser, Chris Colstrom, Erie, Florida Part 3, and hopefully get some Skunk Ape and Bigfoot episodes up for you guys as well. Into the Fray episode 100 is coming up. It will air on August 31st. If you have ever considered calling in, please do so on either Friday the 18th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or Sunday the 20th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be on the line to hear your encounters. I would really love to make episode 100 a big one, and I want it to be all about you guys and your encounter stories. Those personal tales, those are what I love the most, so I'd love for that to be episode 100. Live call-in shows. At least the recording is live, right? Recorded live, does that make sense? Anyhow, 702-997-2007. So August 18th or the 20th at 6 p.m. PST. I will be on the line for at least a couple of hours waiting for your call. A few shout-outs here. Shawnee De Fueta in Ireland. Solvig Jensen in Italy, and a huge thanks to Jay Clark for the donations through the PayPal link on the ITF homepage. Thank you, Jay Clark. It's going to be a busy couple weeks for Insiders coming up. I've got all new video episodes, including one on Shadow People, where I went back to the very location in Utah where I saw the 4 shadow figures all those years ago. Go to intothefrayradio.com and click Become an Insider. It's only $4.99 a month or $54 for an entire year. Into the Fray has passed 1 million downloads, and that is only possible because you folks tune in, quote unquote, every week. You tell your friends and family, and of course you share the show across whatever social media site you choose. A huge high five and a thanks from me. Couldn't be done without you guys, so thank you so much. Without further ado, let's get to Derek of the Monsters Among Us podcast. So on this edition of Into the Fray, I am titling this Monsters Among Us Part 2. I have Derek Hayes of the Monsters Among Us podcast. Now, Derek, you were on episode 72, was your first episode, and we spoke about not only your own personal encounters and also some of the calls that you have gotten into your show. This time, and it was a great idea on your part, you thought that it would be nice to actually cut in a few of the calls from a few of your seasons. And these are some of your favorite calls that have come through your hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. So first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing some of these fantastic calls with us.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we have a few calls. We have 3 calls spanning from Season 2 and Season 3. And I got to tell you guys, when you hear these, you're going to be a little creeped out because I know I was. Now, I remember these when they first aired, and I told you that I wanted to not spoil the surprise again because my memory is bad enough to where I don't remember what you said about these calls. So I want to see what your thoughts are again on all 3 of these. I want to say before we go on, the reason we are doing this is Season 3 just came to a close, and Season 4 is about to air. And actually, it will air the very same night that this one is first airing on Into the Fray.
It will, exactly. And actually, we're kind of doing the trade-off here because you were kind enough to guest host on that Season 3 finale, and you did an awesome job, and I've getting in a lot of, emails and stuff like that, people telling me that they really enjoyed your segment. So thank you for doing that.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you. You had quite the all-star guest cast there. I enjoyed listening to that one. Another great episode.
It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to do that episode.
That's good to hear that people like it. You have a very different format than a lot of us do. Some I know just they talk with their co-host, whereas I just talk with a guest for the most part at this point. And you just rely solely on people calling into that hotline. And we're going to plug that again at the end, of course. And the importance of, if you have a story, it's just call it in and you can tell it right to the hotline. There's no pressure there. You can stay anonymous if you need to. But that's what your show is based on, is people calling this number and leaving their encounter stories.
Yeah, basically it's a way for them to get these encounters off their chest, so to speak. I know a lot of people are plagued with, the what ifs or what is this kind of situation. And this is a way that they can it's paranormal therapy, let's call it that. They get on the phone and they talk it out, or they, sometimes they send me an email, and that's fine. And you could talk it out that way too. But I feel like just discussing it and hearing somebody else's point of views, try to either debunk it, which I try to do if I can, or, I also try to substantiate their claims with other stories of similar encounters. So you never know what you're going to get with a call. But I do encourage people to, let it out, tell us what you saw, and hopefully we can try to figure it out together.
I think paranormal therapy is a great 2 words to use to tagline that.
It's my new band name, I think.
Right. Hashtag paranormal therapy. No, I mean it, and you can hear it, and you'll hear it, guys, in a couple of these calls tonight that we're going to play for you from Derek's show, that people will have to take pauses, and they have to, they'll pause and breathe and maybe take a drink or a swallow, and they're very nervous because retelling your encounter is not an easy thing. So you will hear that in these people's voices for their paranormal therapy.
Exactly.
Well, first, let's get to the Vermont mystery dog creature. This first aired on Season 3, Episode 7, and it is a call from Kevin.
Hi, Derek. My name's Kevin. I live in Vermont. It was 2016 when I had my encounter with a weird animal that I really have no explanation for. My wife and I had just moved into a house that we were renting at the time in Chittenden, Vermont. I grew up just down the road from there, the next town over in Pittsford. Most of my family lives in Chittenden, so I know the roads, I know the woods. I've been hunting since I was a kid, and I have no explanation for what I saw. It was December, I want to say 13th or 14th, somewhere in that neighborhood. I was, weirdly enough, I was playing video games with one of my friends online, and my headset died. So I decided I was going to go into Rutland, which is the next town that actually has like stores and stuff in it. There's a Walmart there, so I figured, I'll run into Walmart before they close. It was like 9:30 when I left my house, so I figured I'll run in, I'll grab a headset, I'll come back home, and I'll play for a bit longer. I was on my way in, and I took the turn that I drive this road every day. When I was working in Rutland, I drove that road every day to work. I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of turned onto there and started going. There's kind of a long sloping left-hand curve in the road, not necessarily a turn, but like a curve in the road. And being December in Vermont, it's been dark since 3 o'clock in the afternoon pretty much. As I come around the corner, my headlights hit this animal in the road that I have no explanation for what it was. It was huge. It was down on all fours. The length of it from the tip of its snout, I guess you'd call it, to its end of its like rear end kind of area. It took up the entire lane that I was in. So this is a big animal. It stood about, I'd say, maybe 3.5 to 4 feet at the shoulders, kind of like a medium to dark gray color fur. It was built like a hyena, I would say. It had a real big head, had a hump at the shoulders, kind of like what a hyena has. And as it went back from the back to the back legs, it sloped down slightly. The rear legs were definitely dog-like. The front legs were even dog-like. The front legs didn't have paws on them. They were closer to hands. Not like human hands, but almost like raccoon paws. You could tell they kind of look like hands, but they're still kind of paws, but they look like they can grip and stuff. The eyes, when my headlights hit it, were like an amber yellow color. You can definitely tell they're not like a lot of the stories you hear with like Bigfoot or Dogmen where people think, oh yeah, the eyes glowed. No, it was eye shine is what it was. like I said, I've been hunting since I was 6 years old, so I know the difference between something glowing and eye shine. I didn't see the teeth, but like I said, the head was hyena-like, but the snout was a bit longer than it would be on a hyena. The ears were kind of like pinned back, you know, like when you see a dog that gets really, really angry and it lays its ears back. The ears were almost German Shepherd-like, where they came to a point, but it wasn't a real sharp point like a Doberman's. Again, this thing was enormous. I usually carry a handgun with me when I go outside after dark just for personal protection. Due to the area that we lived in, there was a lot of coyotes, and you get bears in the summer and spring and fall, not so much in the winter because they hibernate. But I always have my, at the time I had a .40 caliber Glock with me. It was in my glove box. I didn't take a shot at it because I honestly thought that if I were to have stepped out of my vehicle and given this thing a chance to come near me, I wouldn't be making this phone call right now. I don't scare easily. I've seen a lot of really weird stuff, but this thing, it shook me up pretty bad. Even driving back through there at night, I get real tense. I've had nightmares about this thing ever since I saw it. And every time I talk about it, it makes me nervous. Like, I don't know, but for some reason, it makes me really nervous to even, think about this thing. I'm trying to remember. I don't believe I saw a tail on this animal. Not that really would have made it any less scary or whatever. Yeah, I just figured I'd call and see if maybe you could use this story on your show. And also just to try to get it off my chest. I've only talked to a couple of people about it. My wife knows about it. She obviously knows because I was very shaken up when I came home, and I told her about everything. I told my aunt, who lives just up the road from where we used to live in Chittenden, and she's actually seen this thing, too, on her back lawn. She didn't get as close a look at it as I did, but she definitely had seen it. Love the show. Keep up the good work. I discovered you by listening to Into the Fray, and since then I've gone back and listened to all the old episodes, and you've jumped into the top 2 of podcasts that I look forward to download. I check every day to see when it's coming out because I've only been listening for a little bit, but just wanted to call and share my story. Thanks.
Well, another thanks to you and to, of course, the caller, Kevin, to 888-608-NIGHT. So, what was your first thoughts, Derek, when you heard Kevin's call into your hotline?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I am obsessed with large cat and large dog stories. Dog man. I haven't really heard of cat man, but I'm waiting for it. But these mystery black panthers and, these mystery black dogs, devil dogs, whatever you want to call them, I'm just fascinated by these stories. So when this one came through, I was real pumped. The other thing that really got me into this call was the way he was telling it. You could tell he was nervous about it. He was not just nervous to be calling in, which you get from time to time, but he was nervous talking about it. He was nervous bringing it back up, and you could tell it was something that really affected him. And whenever you get a call that's like that, you just, your mouth waters. It's a juicy call,
Yeah, a couple things that I starred when I was listening, and I'm going through the notes again. It's like it took up the entire lane, and also his aunt had actually seen it too, which is very in her own yard, he says. So you're like, what? Well, this thing isn't very shy, obviously.
Well, if I was that big, I probably wouldn't be very shy either.
True.
The thing that got me and really made me question was the description of the paws or the hands. He said they were similar to a raccoon's, which it's just terrifying if you think about that. A gigantic dog with raccoon hands. If you've ever seen a raccoon's hand, it may as well be a human's hand with big claws on the end of it. So that feature was very interesting and something I hadn't heard outside of an actual dog man call. So, that's strange as well.
Yeah, bringing up the dog man, it's something that I jotted down here. The German Shepherd-like ears, we've heard that before when talking about the quote-unquote dog man or a werewolf. He does say he doesn't see a tail, but he says, I don't quite know if that's just because I didn't see it, or he said, it made me laugh because he goes, not that it would matter anyway, because this thing was so freaky. I was like, amen, yes, absolutely. He did admit, though, that he could tell the difference between something that had glowing eyes and eye shine, and that he could tell that this had eye shine. So,
yeah,
I give him props because he's definitely trying to deduct each point and say, you know, whether it was weird or he just had seen that before. You know, when you're looking things up that are just native to an area, obviously a massive hyena is not native as far as we know, right? They're in some various zoos and things like that. But I did kind of start to do a little Google search, and there is a safari park up in Canada. And they've actually got lions and hyenas, and I'm pretty sure you guys know Canada's freaking cold. And I wrote a note here. I don't think if it's the zoo director, that one of the handlers there says that they're fine in that super duper cold weather. They have no problem with it. He said at first the lions would like slip on the ice, but they get up and they're fine. You know, they're pretty sturdy animals, and that he says that they can adapt basically. They're highly resilient creatures, and we usually think of them in the super hot savanna desert or something, but they're fine up there in Canada. So it makes me kind of wonder. I'm like, well, did someone crossbreed some ultra massive something with a hyena, or are we talking about some cryptid like a dog man?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I wonder if anything has escaped from that area. I actually grew up quite close to the Zanesville. I don't know what they ended up calling it, some sort of wildlife massacre or something, where the guy killed himself and released all of his lions, tigers, bears, wolves, I think a monkey, like all that stuff. So you never know when one of these creatures is going to slip out of its cage or off its collar, or however, you know, they're kept. I guess it's possible that there was a loose hyena roaming the countryside of Vermont. I guess anything's possible. The one thing I did find really interesting about his description, that it was similar to a hyena, was, are you familiar with the beast of Gévaudan in southern France?
Yeah, I have seen those very famous, like old school pictures of that creature.
Yeah, the carvings or cutouts or whatever those were.
Yes.
I think, I'm going off the top of my head here, but I think it was in the 1760s or 50s, somewhere around in that time, in rural southern France. Over 100 people, mostly women and children, were killed by what they thought was a wolf until somebody survived an attack and described the creature. And by all accounts, it sounds exactly like a hyena. Large in the front, smaller in the back, the stripes on it, the lack of a tail or a shortened tail. So when Kevin described this creature that he saw, that's the first thing that popped in my head. I don't think there's a correlation, but it's just strange that they have such a similar description of the two creatures.
You know, I don't know, Derek, if you've come across episode. I look up the number because I never know the numbers. It's episode 27 of my own show. I don't know the numbers. I have
the same problem.
Okay, good. Hellhounds of Route 66 is what I entitled it. But this encounter happened to Clint Granberry of OK Talk when he was in Arizona, and it was very strangely around the Devil Dog Road exit.
Okay, yeah.
Is it just outside Kingman or just before Kingman? Sorry, guys, I forget. It's been a while. But it was middle of the day, and he's driving on the road on the highway with his wife, and they both see a very strange looking creature. And he had the very same description. Looked like a damn hyena, he said. And they ended up hitting it.
Oh, wow.
Damaged the front of the car. And he pulls over immediately because I think he had a big rig behind him and another car next to him, and he's thinking, oh boy, that thing is going to be, tore up, just blown up, right? They pull over, and he's like, it's like we're the only ones that even had any encounter with this thing, and it was huge. He's like, there's no way that it didn't get either pulled under my wheels and just blood everywhere, or another car hit it, and he actually called patrol down and a tow truck and had to get towed back into Kingman. And I think the mechanic in Kingman was like, yeah, there's just a big magnet pulling people in because of the high strangeness in this area. And I actually put in the show notes, he sent me a picture, and he goes, this is the closest thing to what me and my wife saw. And it literally is just like a massive hyena.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't live too far from there, so maybe I'll take a little road trip and go look for some hyena myself. Sure, which particular part of the state it's in, but
yeah, I wonder
it's worth the drive no matter how far it is.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very far for you, I don't think. I don't think that he was maybe but 40 minutes outside Kingman, whichever way it was away from Kingman. But yeah, so that ties right in. People are definitely seeming to see the same thing, and I don't really know why. Of all the things you'd go, I want to call a paranormal show and tell a story, but I'm feeling like a hyena creature sounds good to me. It just seems strange, right?
Yeah, of all things, why would you use that? Yeah.
Right.
Now, I'm wondering, he said he hit the creature. Was there any blood or hair sample or anything on the car that he could collect?
I should have gone back to listen to the whole thing. I think it was like a 3.5-hour show, so I think combing through the whole thing would have been too long for me to do prior to us getting on, but I think that there was a little bit of blood and hair on there, and I want to say he didn't keep the hair, so everybody's probably screaming at him listening to that part of it. But yeah, he sent pictures of the damage to the car, and it actually put it in the show notes of the highway patrol pulled up and the damage on the front of his Honda Element, and
Wow.
He was baffled by that, and it freaked his wife out extremely bad. And I think that she was, if I remember right, she was the one that somehow she saw this picture and she's like, oh my God, like she turned white and she's like, that's what we hit. That's what we saw.
That's incredible. I'm going to go back and listen to that episode. All of this sounds vaguely familiar, but I've heard so much stuff that it's hard to pin down where I got the information. So it's definitely something I want to go back and check out. You said episode 26?
27.
27.
Yeah. I only know that because I wrote it down right here on my
I just wrote it down myself.
us.
You have the same problem I do. When you put out so many shows, you start to forget where all this stuff fell into line at, and it just blurs together. And you'll have somebody say, "Oh, on episode 41," like I don't remember. You're gonna have to tell me what that one was about. So
I think it's getting worse now, though. I think the melting pot in my brain is getting even worse, even the content on my own show, because I think it was. I don't know if it was in the Facebook group or on Twitter, but someone was like, hey, which episode did, and they couldn't remember the person's name. That would have helped me, exponentially. But what episode did someone have it was a very specific encounter with something blue and a light and the thing. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know. I really don't know, because I've had a lot of lights and orbs and I'm like, sorry. No.
You need a Wikipedia page to keep everything straight for you.
Yeah, I really do. If I could put all my show notes into one book, I've done something really stupid. And I just bought a ton of spiral notebooks, but they're all just kind of whichever one I happen to pick up is the one that, hey, I'm going to use this one for this recording. I should not have ever done that because I can't find anything.
I'm pretty organized, but I still have to go back through and look at all this stuff. So. It never works. It never works the way you want it to.
No. I try.
But back to Kevin's story, there's an interesting element to his story that I didn't share on my show for whatever reason. And I honestly don't remember why I didn't share this. But a few days after that episode aired, I got an email from somebody that lives down the road from Kevin, strangely enough. And he claims that in the same corner or bend that Kevin was describing his encounter at, there is a large greyhound dog that lives in a house nearby, and that it's often seen running across the road.
Uh-oh.
So I love when this comes up because it just adds another element to these stories where you're trying to dig through all this information and find the root, find the truth. And while I think that's a good attempt at debunking or at least explaining what's going on, I find it hard to believe you would mistake a greyhound for a hyena or a hyena-like creature. I mean, the two, with the exception of them being on four legs, having a head and a tail, there's not a whole lot that they share in common. From what I've seen in greyhounds, and I don't own one, but they're quite skinny animals. They're very slender and very sleek, and a hyena is the exact opposite of that. It's a muscle machine. So
yeah,
I think the email is very interesting, but I'm not real sure, what the correlation there is. I mean, I guess if it's dark and you're not expecting to see something in the road, and you just look up and get a glimpse of something, I guess you could jump to that conclusion that it was some sort of big beast. But I don't know. It just adds another element to that story, and I just love when things start unpacking like that. It's just so interesting to me.
Well, really good on that guy for sending that email. Bravo to him, because it, like you said, just adds another piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the other point that you brought up about the front legs, as far as the greyhound situation, I just don't know why you would say the front legs had what looked like closer to hands, like something like a raccoon that could grip it. That's a really interesting detail, because I've been up near greyhound dogs, and like you said, not only they are like a rail all the way down, including their head, by the way. Their paws look like dog paws. There's no way you'd go, oh, those are weird front paws. It just seems like an odd detail to throw in there.
Yeah, yeah. This just dawned on me actually when you said that. I wonder if he saw a beaver. I know this sounds crazy, but beavers are huge. They're really big, and you'd be surprised how big they are if you've ever seen one like cross the road in front of you. But they're really, for lack of a better word, they're fat creatures. They're just like a ball of fur with little legs sticking out. But they have those hands. They have almost fingers on their hands. They're webbed, but they would kind of look similar to that. And it's just something that popped in my head, and that's probably a crazy notion, but no more crazy than a devil dog jumping out in front of you.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, a hyena devil dog is not crazy then. Yeah. Well, I mean, if he didn't see the tail, that's because the tail would be square with the ground, right? That's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. Is maybe it was a werebeaver. There we go.
A werebeaver, the first time ever. Welcome to a glimpse of Monsters Among Us, because I'll sit there and listen to these stories for hours. I'm like, what could this thing be? Like, of all the things, like a beaver. There you go. Sometimes my ideas are better than others.
They grow them big there in Vermont. What do you want? They're happy beavers up there. We're going to get emails about that one. The old werebeaver. You can't help it.
It's all that Ben and Jerry's, I think. Don't they grow that up there?
Yeah, that is where that's from, isn't it?
Yeah.
The happy Vermont people. All that skiing and Ben and Jerry's are like, we're just going to go skiing and burn that right off. All right, let's get to our next call. It is titled Grasshopper Creature. It happened in southern Illinois. It is a call from Bonnie from Season 3, Episode 1.
Eric, I've been listening to your podcast for about 2 weeks now, and I decided to call in today after I heard the Season 1 finale. You had a caller that called in and talked about seeing the bottom half of something strange. So I had an experience a handful of years ago. I was out running very early in the morning, usually at a time when there wasn't too many people or cars out. This was in southern Illinois, and there were cornfields nearby and, wooded areas, but this was a neighborhood. My dog ran with me, and this particular morning, I noticed that my dog had kind of slowed her step and was perking up and lifting her ears and looking at something that was, I guess, ahead of us. And I decided to look up and see, is it a rabbit or somebody out walking perhaps. And I saw something that initially I thought had to have been somebody wearing some kind of a costume. It was walking adjacent to a street light. And the street lights, when I went back later to kind of gauge and see if maybe my perception was off, I think that the street light was probably between 15 and 20 feet high. And what I saw was just a few feet across the way from the street light, and it was nearly as tall as the street light. So I'm guessing it was anywhere between 10 and 15 feet tall. It was a dark, solid creature, and it was walking upright. And at first I thought it was possibly somebody using stilts on their legs and carrying some kind of extenders on their arms. And I realized that somebody can't walk with stilts and bend at stilt knees. There just would be completely impossible. So I stopped where I was and watched what I was seeing. It was just walking down the road, and I was trying to discern what I might be seeing or a distortion of something, and I realized it was a real and solid creature living. As it walked, its legs lifted up and would reach and stretch in very, very long strides. It was long, dark, and skinny, with pointed, I guess, hands, and a somewhat rectangular shaped head. And as it moved, the head seemed to sweep its gaze from side to side. I'm probably about, I would say, 1/8 of a mile, away from it. Not so far that I couldn't tell what I was looking at, definitely close enough that I didn't want to get any closer to it. And as it was striding, its arms were moving in a pumping motion up above its head. And I kept thinking to myself, grasshopper. This is what its body seems to resemble and be shaped like. And for a moment, I thought about turning around and fleeing for home, but I felt a compulsion almost to want to know what I was seeing. So I very slowly began to jog forward towards where the creature was. It was on a road that came to a T. It was moving to the right, and I kept my eyes on it, and my dog was watching it also. And as we got closer and closer, of course, it was continuing to stride farther away. And by the time I came to the end of the road had a T, it had moved so far into the darkness that I couldn't see it at all. It had completely, I won't say vanished, but moved far enough into the darkness away from where the street light was and toward a wooded area that I could no longer see it. So I turned the opposite direction. I didn't have any intention of following it into the darkness. And I have been puzzled and frightened by this experience, knowing that it sounds completely irrational. When I later gave it some thought, trying to come to a conclusion of what I had possibly seen, the first thing is I know it was real and solid. My dog was what brought my attention to it, so I know I wasn't hallucinating. There was no people, no cars, no one else around, and I watched it for probably, I would guess, about 30 seconds before, maybe 30 to 45 seconds before it had disappeared into the darkness, and its stride and its gaze did not seem to have any awareness that I was there. So, needless to say, for the remaining years that I lived in that area, which was about 7 or 8 more years after that, I looked for it. First in fear of wanting to not see it, but also kind of hoping to see it so that I could definitively know for myself that this was something that was real. Also, in putting a description to it, I would definitely have to say it was more praying mantis-like than grasshopper. Initially, I thought grasshopper because of the jointed legs and the pointy tips of the appendages, and appearing to be kind of exoskeleton. The creature that I saw was very, very dark gray, not quite black, and it seemed to be all one color. I couldn't see a lot of variance in its coloring. So, yeah, it was like a 15-foot tall praying mantis man, and striding down the street early one morning while I was out for my run. So when I heard the last caller call in and describe using the words praying mantis-like for the lower portion of the thing that he saw, I felt like this was similar enough that I wanted to share. I've never really been a big believer in aliens, and I've never even understood or known about cryptids. This was an experience that has kind of caused me to be obsessed with learning about and hopefully hearing about other people having witnessed similar things. So I still to this day don't know what it was, but it has definitely changed my life and my perception about what exists here and in other places. Your podcast is incredible and amazing. I love it. I am so excited that I found the podcast. I'm really happy to hear about other people's stories about creatures and monsters and other things. So thank you so much for the podcast, and thank you for listening to my story.
All right, let's jump into this with Bonnie. Now, this is a gal. She's up, she's running, she's awake, she's got her dog with her, so she's not, by herself. And she makes a good point. She's like, I was just nose to the ground doing my run, and the only reason I looked up was because my dog kept kind of perking its ears up and acting kind of funny. So I looked up, and there it is. And at first she says, she thought it was a person on stilts, but then she realized that was impossible because it was like holding like things up above its head, and pretty freaking terrifying if you ask me, because the second she goes, well, it was stretching its legs out of necessity because it was a real creature, you're kind of going, oh my goodness gracious, of all the things to see on an early morning run, I think I would buy a treadmill.
I love the fact that the dog reacted to the creature. That to me tells me that there was something there, something that the dog saw as well, and in fact saw it before Bonnie even did. So whenever there's an element like that in a story, I always feel like that's the tether that grounds it, that makes it more realistic, to me anyway. And then she gets into the thought that maybe it was someone on stilts or, with arm extensions, which, that's very possible. You could easily build a costume. Well, I don't know about how easily, but you could build a costume with leg extensions and arm extensions to make yourself 10, 15 feet tall if you really wanted to do that. And in fact, that reminds me of a video I saw, I want to say 10 years ago, of a gentleman in London that was messing with the closed circuit TV cameras that are all over the streets there. He built this alien costume and went out on the corner and just kind of walked around. And he was 10 feet, 15 feet, something like that tall. He was massive with these stilts. And they just kind of waited around to see what the cops were going to do. And to me, that was terrifying. I'm like, that's a good way to get yourself shot. But,
yeah.
There's a video of that, and I can actually send you the link if you want to throw it in the show notes. It's really interesting to look at. But it reminded me a lot of this call. But then it kind of verged off from there because it wasn't a guy in a suit. I mean, she got closer, and it was still a creature. It was a uniform color. It wasn't, patched together with drywall stilts or, whatever. So whatever Bonnie saw that day was terrifying. Yeah,
the fact that she said it was doing things out of like biological necessity from the sounds of it. Like the head was sweeping side to side, and then the arms were kind of going in a pumping motion above its head, like feelers or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how my favorite creature on the planet, the camel spider, runs. They have these feelers, and they put them straight above their head, and because that's their feelers. So anyhow, it sounds like it was doing some of these things out of necessity. The thing about the phone call where I'm like, what? Really? Why? Bonnie decides she's going to start jogging towards it because she wants to get a closer view of this thing. So a big bravo to Bonnie for doing that. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have just either wet themselves in the very same spot they stood in or just booked it home. But she's like, you know what? I'm going to check this out.
I'd like to say that I would do the same thing Bonnie did, but in the situation, who knows how that would really play out?
Right.
15-foot praying mantis grasshopper creature or run. I think I'd probably run, but I'd like to think that I wouldn't take off. I want to know what it is. And in fact, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but there are multiple reports of what they call mantis beings or aliens. Mm-hmm. And basically, this kind of sounds a little left field for me, my personal taste, but it's like a species of alien that, from what I gather, is in charge of the Greys and oversees a lot of the alien abductions that you hear reported. Oftentimes it's the grays that are doing the work, and in the background are these humongous, they look like praying mantises. And, they often wear like robes and cloaks and stuff like that. And Bonnie's report, I don't believe it was wearing anything. I didn't catch it if it was. But, the fact that these stories have been out there kind of helps her story a bit. At least there's some precedent there that someone has seen something similar to this, not necessarily on the side of a road, but somewhere they've seen it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any UFO sightings around the area around the time of her sighting, or even further down the rabbit hole, any abductions.
That's a good point. And I can't remember if she lists the year, but she says it's in southern Illinois. So it wouldn't be too hard to go jump on MUFON or something and try to block all those down. That's something I never thought about, but that, it's a really good point.
It is funny, though, about the mantis creatures wearing robes. Like, who are you fooling? Like, no, you're totally normal now. You're wearing a robe. You're fine. I'm not in absolute terror now.
Here's the craziest part. They're always reported as wearing purple robes, of all things. So I just find that really strange.
I just can't help but giggle about that. But it is a strange thing. And if you wanted to come up, again, if you want to make up a story, why wouldn't you just be like, they like black robes? I mean, why are they always in the purple robes? What's the point?
Yeah, it's strange.
If you're going to make up a story, why not just, change all the details, unless you're, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this one. Besides, and I don't think that this is the same thing that you were talking about, because I'm not familiar with the gentleman that was trying to mess with the CCTV cameras. Do you remember that very famous video? I think it's just called the Night, not the Night Stalker. That's military. Shoot. They tried to debunk it on Fact or Faked. Fresno Nightcrawler? Yes, the Nightcrawler. But I don't think that, are they saying how tall those, whatever they were supposed to be? Weren't those quite a bit shorter than
I think they estimated them at 3 or 4 feet, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that was debunked as just like a crude puppet that somebody was filming with their security camera. I don't know that for a fact. I've read that in several different places, but that is a very strange video. And they don't necessarily look mantis-like, but they have that same aura about them, I suppose, if you get that same shroud of mystery of both creatures. So I kind of see the correlation there.
I remember them looking very much like they were walking very wooden, like as if their legs could not bend because it was like, 2 pieces of wood or something.
It probably was,
yeah. Still a very creepy video.
There's something, with Bonnie's call that I try to apply to a lot of my calls when they see a creature like this. Specifically, something that is suspected to be alien. Of all the places on the planet, why would it go to a street corner outside of Bonnie's house? And that's something that I wonder about all the time. Some people talk about when they were a little kid, an alien would walk in and play with their pajamas or move their blankets or something. And I think to myself, of all the people on the entire planet, why did they choose this one particular little girl to visit that night? It's not a way to debunk anything. It's just a question that I have is, why was it there? Let's say it was an alien. Let's say it was some sort of mantis creature from another dimension or another planet. Who knows? But why Southern Illinois? Why that corner? Why that day?
Well, I think I know why, because she did mention there was cornfields nearby. And I think that if the movie Signs has taught us anything, is that aliens love cornfields, right?
They love corn.
That's one of the best parts, is when he's walking down the aisle of the cornfield and he's got the flashlight and then he sees... It's funny because it reminds me of like the woman like sticking her leg out from the door in Crocodile Dundee.
Oh, yeah.
Around the corner. It looked just like that. I'm like, what is this alien trying to do with Mr. Mel Gibson here?
Seduction.
A little ooh la la there. Yeah, that's a great movie. By the way, Signs is very creepy. A lot of people hate M.
Night Shyamalan.
Yeah,
he's touch or go for me, but I do enjoy that movie. It's funny, is I saw that in the theaters when I was in college or maybe just graduated. But I went to school in northwest Ohio, which is nothing but cornfields. absolutely nothing but cornfields.
Good timing, right?
So I step out of the theater. It's like just dusk. The sun's starting to set, and it's just a parking lot surrounded by corn. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
You're like, really? That's one of my favorite little creepy movies, though. In fact, Sam calls him M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong. That's what Sam Sheeran calls him. So I don't think he's a fan. I don't know why I'm getting that vibe, but yeah, that's what he calls him, Shyamalan Ding Dong. Did you see that? What's that?
I was going to say, like I said, he's pretty touch and go. Some of them are great, some of them not so much for me.
Yeah, like I like the psychology behind what in the world? I could see the whole movie in my mind except the title, The Village. I like
The Village.
I like the psychology behind that because I'm like, dude, there are definitely cults out there like that.
Yeah.
That would come up with their own terrifying creature to keep people in. But, I kind of like when you don't find out it's just some guy in a costume and it kind of makes you wonder. You're like, maybe there is some other stuff out there. But the calls like this kind of cement that for you. And you're going, I don't really know why Bonnie would want to call anybody and say, I saw a 15-foot tall praying mantis, because that was so freaking awesome that day. And I'm sure she just loves her run still. Although she did say that she continues to live there 7 or 8 more years, and she keeps looking for it, which I mean, I'm sure, how could you not? But
yeah, you have to at that point, right?
Yeah. The fact she ran after it that day, though, I'm like, go, Bonnie. That is so badass, because I don't really know that I would either. I think until you're in the situation, you just don't know. You can guess, but...
Yeah. Yeah. And Bonnie's a great contributor as well. She's left me a couple stories, and none of them nearly as spectacular as her. She calls it the grasshopper creature, but she's had a couple small ghost encounters that were also pretty great. So you probably hear from her a few times still on upcoming episodes.
See, and it makes you wonder, though, because going back to the tie-in with, is it an alien, the classic, if you want to call it, mantis creature. See, she's had these ghost experiences too, and in a lot of these cases, a lot of the paranormal activity runs the gamut for these folks.
Mm-hmm. And I'm reluctant to admit that I kind of fall in that category where I've had so many weird things happen to me over my life that I actually did a whole show on that not too long ago, maybe 10 episodes ago, where it was just people that had constant encounters. And I have a handful of awesome folks that call in, and they're very genuine, they're very believable, but they just have so many encounter stories. And if you're a longtime listener to my show, you know that I have as well. I'm always talking about, this weird thing I saw here, or the Black Panther that I saw there. And it's just strange how some people are just, in tune or at the right place at the right time, enough times that they have all these experiences. It's strange how that happens.
Yeah, and I encourage everybody to go back to Into the Fray 72, and we talked about all your encounters there. Yeah, I'm still waiting for my next big one. Everyone's sick and tired of me, just talking about this, but I'm ready. But I will say that, I think I go to sleep every night, and I have just freaking wacky dreams. Just dreams that if I should wake up and write them down, they could be some movie that Tim Burton could do or something, real just off the wall stuff. But
yeah.
But I will say that I know the difference between what is a dream and what I actually saw. So that can also lend some credence to some of these folks, especially a guy like Bonnie, who she and her dog are just out doing something very mundane. They're going out for their morning jog.
Yeah, wide awake.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people that jog half asleep, so I'm going to say she was wide awake for that one.
I mean, if we could all sleepwalk and exercise, I think that would be fantastic. Just be blacked out for the whole thing.
Get it done. And while we're at it, we'll do dishes while we're passed out, too, because I hate doing that.
Yeah. Oh, I have a third one to add to that for us, Derek. Editing while just completely blacked out.
I've fallen asleep editing before, so I'm kind of the opposite of that. I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, where am I? So
but nothing is done. You're like, God damn it.
Yeah, nothing got done, of course, yeah.
Yeah. That's so unfair for us. Yeah, those editing gnomes, they still haven't come out, those damn gremlins. They're just messing with the wiring.
Plenty of gremlins. Ever since I moved, I've had nothing but gremlins. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, yeah, that milk, dude. Got to put that milk out. I've tried. And it's just, I don't know. I don't think I have
sours.
bad luck, per se. Yeah, it just sits out there. I'm like, maybe they don't like that whole milk. They're weight conscious. They need fat-free.
Soy milk.
Yeah, they're lactose intolerant gremlins. Those little whiners. Well, let's say we get into this last call, and this last call is a subject born and bred on Monsters Among Us podcast, and I am talking about the very famous or infamous, I'm sure to the people that have seen them, the mirrored men. And I don't really even know where to start beginning to describe them because they are so damn creepy. And talk about getting an impression left on you. Hearing, what's his name, Derek, in this one? I'm sorry. Do you know the original?
Actually, yeah, he didn't leave his name. It was
that's
an anonymous
right.
call.
This is the anonymous. Okay. Hearing this man up in the tree stand describe these three mirrored men, I couldn't help but think of my own story, of course, except for the fact that I didn't see them as triplets. They weren't identical. They weren't moving the same. There was, of course, 4 of them. But in my mind, I can't help but make the tie-ins. But let's play the call and see what other people think about this. This is not the first time that the subject of mirrored men has come up on your show. So this is an anonymous caller. This is from Indiana. It is season 2, episode 4.
Hey, so I heard your most recent episode, number 13, and the 2 calls you played about a synchronized trio of dark shapes. I have a similar story. I was deer hunting in Indiana a few years back. I think it was 2011 or 2012. I was up in a deer stand, being very quiet, surveying my surroundings and trying to be as stealthy as possible. I had used odorless detergents on my hunting equipment, odorless soaps on myself, as well as masking my scent by cutting open the green husks of black walnuts. They have a very pungent oil. Rubbed myself in the area around my tree stands with them. Doing everything I could to remain unseen, unheard, unsmelled. When you're hunting in a stand, you're immobile, and you have to dedicate yourself to remaining unnoticed to give yourself the best chance at taking down game. It was around 3 p.m. and I hadn't spotted any deer, but things were promising. The woods were alive with sounds of wildlife, active and normal. I don't know if you've been hunting, but when you are undetected, the forest can get quite lively and loud with animal activity and calls. It's when things grow silent that you know the animals are aware of you. I was scanning the area, looking hard for any sign of deer, which are extremely talented at blending into their surroundings, when I caught sight of 3 shapes stalking slowly through the woods, almost like how a predator will slowly move after its prey to not attract attention. I was sure they were a hunting party at first. They stood upright, but they didn't wear any high visibility colors, which is almost suicide when you're in the woods and it's deer season. You should be wearing a blaze orange cap or vest at least to make sure a hunter doesn't mistake you for a buck and take a shot. I was wearing a blaze orange cap myself, even though I was 15 feet up in a stand. Deer don't see the color how people do, so it's really easy to just add a little bit of safety, and there's no drawback to it. I was upset at first when I noticed the people moving through the woods, as I'd been sitting up this tree for hours, and the last thing I needed was some hikers stomping through the brush and spooking all the game. But that's when it hit me how odd it was that all the sounds of wildlife and bird calls hadn't stopped. When I walked to my stand earlier that day, the woods had gone deathly silent at my passage, only picking up after I'd been stationary in my tree stand for about 40 minutes. But for some reason, 3 people somehow were moving through the woods, and the animals took no notice at all, not going quiet or silent like they would for me. No matter how stealthy I moved or how masked my scent was, the woods always go silent. The 3 weren't walking toward me, more diagonal, and if they continued, their closest point to me would be approaching pretty soon. I couldn't get a great look at the three shapes at first, as they were obstructed by trees and brush most of the time. But as they reached a bit of clearing, I noticed how perfectly in sync the three people were. They walked like they were following some choreography, or maybe soldiers marching in cadence, but without the rhyming. But it was more than that. Every single motion was mirrored perfectly, and in such a weird slow motion, like they were moving through jello. They were also dressed identically in what looked to be some old-fashioned tweed suits. I raised my scope to my eye to get a better look at these odd people, and that's when things went from weird to downright terrifying. The moment I had the gun raised toward these people, everything in the woods went completely silent. I didn't make a sound, and my movement of raising the scope to my eye was subtle. And yet somehow the action of pointing my weapon at these three things had made the entire area go quiet, as if someone had just screamed at the top of their lungs. What I saw when looking through the scope was that all three of them had stopped forward movement and were slowly turning their heads directly toward me with that eerie mirrored motion, like there was one mind controlling all three of them. At that moment, I wished that I had not worn that blaze orange cap, because I was certain that it was going to be the thing to give me away. My heart was racing, but I continued to watch through the scope as the three turned toward me. What I saw was three men who just looked wrong somehow. I think the shape of their eyes was somehow off, and the spacing between their nose and mouth was just slightly odd. And also their mouths were too long. Looking at the mouths reminded me of a bullfrog. Either they were all brothers or triplets, and they looked identical as far as I could tell. The last thing I remember of them was them locking eyes on my tree stand, and then the sun was gone. It was dark, and I was no longer in my tree stand. Now, I wasn't hurt, and yet my tree stand was still 15 feet up. It was a climbing tree stand, which means you need to use it to get up and get down. If you search online for a climbing tree stand, there are videos that show how they function, and you'll see getting down while leaving it up would have been pretty painful. My gun was stuck in the ground, butt up and standing at attention, barrel sunk into the ground as if I dropped it from the stand just right or drove it in intentionally. I checked my phone for the time, and it was 11:17 p.m. Somehow I had lost 8 whole hours. I was extremely spooked, to say the least, and I didn't want to try climbing the tree to get my stand back, especially in the dark and after losing all that time. I didn't have any pain at all, not even a headache, and I'm certain if I'd fallen 15 feet from my stand to the ground that I'd have at least a scrape or a bruise to show for it, but I didn't. So I grabbed my gun up, its barrel was plugged with mud, and I ran back to my truck, sprinting through the woods and not really caring how much noise I made. I took a friend out there the next day with me to help retrieve my stand. He laughed at me the whole time, jokingly asking me how I'd forgotten a stand that I needed to get down from the tree. And I didn't tell him the story, as it sounded insane to me at the time, and still does. I probably would have taken this weird story to my grave without repeating it, but after hearing the other people that have seen the 3 synced things, I had to contribute my encounter with the triplets. I often wonder if what happened to me happened because I pointed a weapon at them and they took it as a threat, or if it was simply because I looked too closely at them.
So, Derek, as far as where we are in the show at season 2, episode 4, how many Mirrored Men stories had come into your show at that point?
At that point, I believe I've had 5, which is about 5 more than I thought I was going to have.
Yeah.
They trickle in. This is such a weird phenomenon. I've never heard it anywhere else other than my callers. It comes from all over the country, but the thing that seems to be consistent is the fact that most, if not all, encounters take place in like a desolate area or a rural area where, there's not a lot of people and you shouldn't see something strange like this. It's something that's also, I've noticed, isn't very timeless. It started in the mid to late 90s. The first account that I got took place, I want to say 95, something like that. And everything else has been previous, or I'm sorry, not previous, after that. So, the 2000s and even up to a couple years ago. The whole thing, like I said, it's just really strange. And, if I was looking at it from the outside and I saw that the only place you can hear a Mirrored Men story is Monsters Among Us, I would question it relentlessly, because I even admit that that's very strange. But the calls I'm getting in seem to be genuine to me. Like I said, when I was on your show last time, the very first Mirrored Men call I had was from a friend of mine that told me the story in college. And I had no idea that there was other people that experienced anything like that. So when I started the show, I called him. I said, you got to tell me your story. You got to tell me on the air so I can play it on the show. And he did, and I thought that would be the end of it. But, for a year and a half later, I'm still getting Mirrored Men calls. And in fact, I got one a few months ago from within 5 miles of my new house.
Oh.
So, of course, I had to go check that out. I shot a video and all kinds of stuff. But the fact that it was that close is really, really interesting.
It seems like these Mirrored Men, especially in the call that we just heard from Indiana, one of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that they move in slow motion, like they're in Jell-O. And it seems like they're not, to those 3 entities, they're not really present or there. I don't know what the right word would be, until they need to be. And they don't really interact that much with the things around them because the animals didn't really notice them at that point. It was not until he pointed that scope at them that everything stopped. The woods reacted to them, and then they reacted to the hunter. So I'm just thinking, like, are they... And that's what I thought about in my own story. It just seemed like I had a glimpse of another dimension or something. It sounds so lame to say that, but it's the best way I can describe it. And maybe I really wasn't supposed to be seeing it, but I did, and I feel like that's maybe kind of what was going on there, because it was so strange that at first they were having zero effect on what was around them.
Yeah, you touched on something there with the other dimension, and I agree with you. It sounds so weird, and it's like a cop-out, like, oh, well, they must be from another dimension. But, I mean, when you sit back and think about it, what else could it be? The way they move, it's like they're not naturally here. Like you said, they don't belong here, so they're having trouble, I don't know, moving through the atmosphere, or maybe they're not here at all, that it's a projection from somewhere else or something, something like that. We're starting to get into some crazy talk here, but yeah, I don't know. I'm speechless when it comes to a lot of this stuff, because there's so many details that are too similar, and some of them I collected a handful of stories for my Mirrored Men special, so nobody heard these except for me and the caller. And I think I collected 4 for that special, and all 4 of them had very similar details, and they were coming from other parts of the country. They were from different phone numbers, different people. So there's some correlation. I don't think it's just people like, oh, this is a cool new thing. Let's jump on this bandwagon. I don't think that's what it is. I think there's something genuine that people are seeing, but what that is, I have no idea.
Yeah. So let's go down some of the bullet points, and I know the answer, but for those people that haven't heard all of those stories, and I encourage everyone to please go back and listen to that special. There's 3 figures. They just look funny somehow. One of the very creepy things from this anonymous caller was the mouths were long, like a bullfrog. That really creeped me out. Is that the same across the board, Derek? Is there always 3 of them, and they always just look kind of funny?
There's always 3, yes. And oftentimes their faces are obscured. It's been reported a few times that they were wearing like a hoodie or a robe or something that covers their face with shadows. So the few that can actually see the face have described a strange looking face, not unlike Men in Black reports, where, a lot of the facial features on a lot of these Men in Black encounters seem to be, wide mouths, wide set eyes, hairless, completely smooth skin. There's a lot of strange attributes that are assigned to these things.
See, but these are very fashionable mirrored men because they had on suits. They had tweed suits, he said,
tweed
right?
Suits, yeah. That was a strange detail that, I haven't heard that they were wearing suits before. Usually it's all black clothing. This is the first time I've heard anything other than, but I guess he didn't say what color it was, so it could have been black suits for all I know.
Right, which would have been pretty badass. He's like looking up like, who are they? What's with the Michael Jackson trio in the frickin' woods right now? I'm trying to hunt.
Shooting a music video out in the middle of Indiana.
It's like, man, they have like really good choreography. They're moving all the same. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, the description of their faces was it takes you a little bit of time to really go down the bullet points, and you're like, holy hell, that poor guy. And then of course, I have to be honest, the culmination for me of what happened to him at the end, like, took it to a whole nother level. What did you think about that after what happened with him ending up on the ground? His gun is barrel down in the ground, and he's lost, what was it, 8 hours?
8 hours,
he's lost.
Yeah. Well, that's the tough pill to swallow, is the 8 hours. That's a long time to, be missing or missing time. That's a lot of missing time. The gun, I can understand, he dropped it and it fell barrel first, stuck in the mud. That's easily explainable, I think. And I think he also could have fallen out and not gotten hurt. That's not too far-fetched. But the 8 hours is just, there's a lot of time slip stories you hear, or missing time stories, and usually it's 40 minutes or an hour, sometimes 2 hours, but 8 hours is a lot. So that's the one red flag in this story for me. I'm not necessarily saying that throws it out as, a made-up call or anything, but it is something you have to question because of the length of that missing time. That's a ton of time.
Because say he did see the 3 beings, and it's not out of the realm of possibility for men to faint. I'm sorry, guys, but you're a human being, okay? You can faint. It is possible. So, yeah, so even if he did faint and he fell out of the deer stand, it's not impossible to not be injured. I know he was mentioning how high it is and it's tough to get up there, but it's not impossible. It's happened, especially if you're loosey-goosey. You hear all the time, drunk drivers, they get in a car accident and it's a mangled wreck, and they're fine because they didn't tense up before they hit. But yeah, if you faint, though, I don't really think that it's normal to stay out for 8 hours. Unless he's just like, well, I'm already out. I may as well just keep sleeping because I'm super tired.
Or if he, maybe hit his head on his way down.
Right, that's a good point.
And he was unconscious for 8 hours, but he didn't mention, waking up groggy or anything,
right.
In line with that kind of thing. Like, you'd think if he got knocked out for 8 hours that he'd have, a pretty sizable headache at that point.
Yeah. Unless he's, I don't know. Maybe he's a super tough guy. If he just didn't check his head for a goose egg or I guess you could hit it on something small, but you'd have to hit the very perfect point on your noggin to do that without it leaving a mark, right? I would guess.
I feel like that's all just too much of a stretch. To get knocked out for 8 hours and not have, well, he didn't describe it, but, not have a bump or a headache or anything. Just, to me, that's just too much to take in.
It must sometimes, as far as the format of your show, I'm sure sometimes you would just love to talk to these folks. So even just for your own, right, for your own questions. And you're like, well, if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, did you check your body for triangle marks or any, right, like scoop marks? Or, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, you're like, well, something must have happened then to you if you're saying that you were out for 8 hours.
I feel like, especially with a call like this, I could do a 2-hour episode of, back and forth questions. But there's also something to be said for you get this lump of information and that's all you get. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the Jaws effect where you don't see the shark, but you see the ripple or you see like a flash of him going by. And that's way scarier than actually seeing the shark. So with these calls, you get the meat and potatoes, but you don't get all the details. You fill that in with your own mind, and I don't care what anybody says, your own mind is scarier than anything else on this planet. So, you know what scares you, and you can fill that in, fill those spaces in, and that's what I love about these calls that come in. It's just they're short, sweet, and spooky. So I kind of like the idea that I don't get to ask them questions.
Yeah, and you know what? I've said this a lot of times. It's not my job or your job to call BS or to say, no, you're not coming on my show, you're full of crap. It's up to the listener. It's up to you guys to make up your own minds. And, as far as not seeing the shark and just seeing the ripples, it's funny when you hit Jaws 3 and they're in the underwater viewing area, and then you have the completely massive immobile shark just zooming in.
By,
just tap the glass. And how horrible was that part of that movie? They really lost sight of what Jaws was. The first one was incredible.
Even the second one was decent, but that third one... Eugh.
Is the third one where they stab the shark with the front of the boat, or is that 4 or 15 or something? I don't even know.
I feel like that was all of them, actually. the third one, they're in like a SeaWorld knockoff in like Miami or something, and Dennis Quaid is there.
The Quaidster.
Lou Gossett Jr., I think, is in that one. Yeah.
Oh,
I used to watch that a ton as a kid, yeah.
It's funny, though, because even as a kid, I remember like watching when Lou Gossett and Quaid and the blonde gal are sitting down in that control room underwater, and they're watching the shark come towards them. I'm like, that's not even moving. It's not even, they didn't even try.
Well, I think it was released as a 3D movie. So that portion would have had the shark floating at you. That's why it looks so goofy.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I don't quote me on that, but I did go to film school, so I'm going to throw that out there.
Well, now I feel bad. I've made fun of that for my entire life, one scene.
It's still pretty goofy.
But it's amazing.
Even with the glasses, I bet it's still pretty goofy.
Yeah, we like those goofy movies, though. Did you know they have all of the Critters movies on Netflix right now?
No kidding. I love the Critters movies.
Every single one. The Critters one is when mom and dad leave. Babysitter is a Las Vegas Metro police officer, female. She comes over across the street to babysit because she's a Metro officer. Who wouldn't trust her? Brings over Critters. Shannon doesn't sleep for 9 months. That's when I started to pile all of my stuffed animals, and I had a shit ton of stuffed animals. I would pile them on the side of the bed right next to me because the critters were always under the bed. And, well, obviously they can't get through a wall of stuffed animals.
Of course not. It's impenetrable. It's just like the magic blanket that if you cover your head with it, the monsters can't get you then.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the Critters movies. Even the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, that one was still okay.
Which one was he in? See, it's been a long time. Was that like the
third one?
Yeah,
I think it was the third one.
He was about... How old was he in that, do you think?
What would that have been? Maybe 92 or so. He would have been 13 or 14.
Yeah.
It was right around what was in Growing Pains. Is that the...
Oh, yeah.
It was right around the time he was in that.
He's a lucky dude. He's made some smart moves in his career. And I like him as an actor. I think he does a really good job. So, yeah, Critters. And he wasn't in Goonies, which, of course, everyone loves Goonies. But the old Brolin was in there, and he looks exactly the friggin' same, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's just like a miniature version of how he looks now.
The bros.
We should do a movie episode. I got all kinds of crazy cryptid horror films we could talk about.
I would love that. I'm sure that my listeners get so annoyed because not only do I always harp on the fact that I want to see something else, but I'm always like, oh, this is just like that movie, this guy from that movie. And people are probably like, it's an effing movie. We're not talking about movies here. But I like movie references. It's just who I am.
It's a universal language. Everybody watches movies and you know, they connect with them in different ways. Like Goonies, like I think we're both around the same age. So Goonies to us is like the holy grail. Like it doesn't get any better than Goonies, you know?
Have you been up to Cannon Beach?
Astoria?
Yeah. Astoria.
Yeah. There's Haystack Rock. And if you go to Astoria, there's the old jail that the Fratellis broke out of is now a movie museum.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can go there and there's some Goonies exhibits. But I was really disappointed when I went there. Humble brag here, I suppose. But for years I worked in film production and we shot most of our films in Portland or that area. And when I went to the museum, it was just all stuff that I'd already cataloged as I was in charge of props. So I'd already cataloged all this stuff. I'm like, well, this is disappointing. I already know what all this stuff is. I put this here. I didn't realize that's what it went to, but when we sell it off, it goes to certain places, and that's where it ended up. So, but the Goonies part was really awesome. I got pictures in the actual jail cell where the one pretended to hang himself, and there's some memorabilia there that's really cool to look at. So if you get an opportunity, definitely go up there.
I don't know how big of a prop the ship was, but what happened to the ship or a piece of the ship?
I think they dismantled it. They built it on a sound stage, and I think they just got rid of the whole thing, which is what they usually do for a lot of, especially back then, because they just didn't realize what it would be worth. If that ship was still in one piece and you put it in a museum, you could sell tickets all day. Yeah. But back then, I don't think they really looked at it that way.
Yeah, there's a guy he's outside Boulder City, and he's got a massive house that overlooks Lake Mead. And I saw it on the Travel Channel, but his whole backyard is made out of this massive pirate ship. And then there's like a pool and a grotto and all this cool stuff. And
oh, cool.
But I mean, if you get a collector, even if it's just a board from the friggin' ship, like I would buy something like that and hang it up in my house.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It's funny is, again, another humble brag, but sorry about that. We worked on the Underworld films. So when I was in charge of props, I went to our prop house and we got to clear some stuff out of here. And one of the prop pieces was this huge throne that, I'll be honest, I didn't really watch the movies. So, I mean, I did. I didn't watch them enough that I can remember characters' names. So, but one of the characters sat on this throne. I think it was from the second film. So it was probably 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide, almost like the Game of Thrones throne that Cersei sits on. Spoiler alert. But so anyway, we had to get rid of that, and I'm like, I could just take this home, but what would I do with it? So whatever happened to it, I don't know. Some of the prop guys, sold it off or did something with it, but it's amazing you can get your hands on this stuff if you know the right people and know how to do it and have a truck big enough to haul some of this crap around. I could be sitting on, the Underworld tour and recording this right now if I had a truck.
Now that would be pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie, Derek. I saw you doing a little mini behind the scenes video. So if you start doing more behind the scenes videos, you can just have you lit a little bit more behind you, and you're like, yeah, that's my throne from Underworld. Very fitting while you're editing all these calls in between the blackouts that we all have while we're doing long bouts of editing.
Covered in skulls and jewels and who knows what. I can't remember. It was made out of styrofoam, weirdly enough, so it probably wouldn't have held up, but still very cool.
Easy to move around, though, right?
It's light.
I'm sure the Iron Throne is not quite iron, so, but it looks cool anyway. It's funny how your phone and Google and your computers are spying on you, because I'm finally caught up on Game of Thrones, and after all these years, it's been out for so long, and it's totally up my alley. I just never started it, but of course, when I started to watch it, I think I watched all of them in like 2 days. So got through them. Now I'm caught up with the new one, but I want all of the books, and I want to go through and read all of George R.R. Martin's books, which is where the series came from, guys. Sorry to tell you, it started as books. But now Amazon is sending me emails because I'm a Prime member, which saves me a ton of money. I tell myself that, just order more. But now they're sending me little blurbs about, they have they call them posters, but they're actually like a banner, like a cloth banner, like you would hang up.
Like a sigil?
Yeah.
Like the Stark
put the
Lannister
sigil? Yes. And there's 3 of them, and then they also have the Night's Watch banister.
Cool.
Oh, I would put that up in my house, and then I still need my massive Predator poster in the living room, mind you, not down hidden in the office. Oh no, that is going up for all to see, because you got to fly that nerd flag really high.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Scare the kids too. Like, oh, you want to sleep over? Sure. There's my Predator over here, and the Bigfoot in that room there, and yeah. Is that it? Go ahead, Derek.
I was just going to say my niece, when she was 7, was the Predator for Halloween. She was obsessed with that.
That is amazing.
The horror runs strong in our family. So,
me and my daughter were talking the other day about, what are you going to do with this Halloween? And we were watching The Nightmare Before Christmas, and of course it came up. Well, Gimli, it's our dog from Lord of the Rings. Gimli, yeah,
yeah.
Everyone's like, what the hell kind of name is Gimli? I'm like, dude, don't even talk to me. I was like, he could be Zero, and somebody could be Sally, and I was like, of course, I'll be Jack. And she's like, no. She's upset about that one. But
it'll fight over that.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool to do like AVP Halloween, right?
Oh, yeah.
If I could manage a xenomorph costume, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do that, because I'm sure if you get on Amazon and you type that in, the masks that look any good are probably going to be about $300. So
yeah, or probably closer to $1,000, I would imagine. The really good, the really good ones. But
because you got to have the appendage that comes out, you got to have that little, like a little air gun in the back, like really get the kiddos.
Well, when it comes to Halloween, you have two options. You can do the movie quality, or you can do the sweeted version where you find duct tape and you turn it into your thing.
Yeah.
So you have like a can of those packed peanut things that pop out at you, like taped to your chest. So whenever somebody comes by, you flip the lid off and it jumps
amazing.
out. There's your two options with Halloween.
Which actually that is pretty funny. It would get more chuckles, which sometimes makes you more popular than just saving all of your candy because no one wants to go to your flipping house because you're terrifying the kids. Like, well, I don't like candy that much, so I guess I better bring them in. Is that why you started the Rag and Bone Emporium? And everybody who follows me on hopefully Instagram and Facebook and Twitter has probably seen the pictures of the lovely Martha Corey tongue from the Salem witch trials. A replica, mind you. Everybody needs to calm down. They're like, oh my God, you're holding a tongue.
Not a real tongue, yeah.
You're holding it. Someone's like, are you going to wash your hands? I'm like, for God's sake, guys. And then also from Jack the Ripper, one of his victims, a lock of her hair, her bloody blonde hair.
Mary Kelly. Yeah.
Mary Kelly, yes, Miss Kelly. Is that what got you started doing those replicas then, as your work in film, Derek?
Well, it is sort of. When I started in the film industry, I wanted to create props, but I also wanted to write and I wanted to direct. I wanted to do all these things, and then I ended up working, like the office side of the job, so it wasn't as fun. So I had to find some outlet to keep those artistic juices flowing, I guess. And this is way before, I had the idea for the podcast or anything like that. So, I sat down and thought, I can make this, I can make that. And next thing you know, it just snowballed. And then people were throwing me suggestions. And I find like I could buy, 200 fake tongues. Well, it's not, I actually make them by hand, but bad example. But I could buy 200 fake tongues. What can I do with 200 fake tongues? I'm like, oh yeah, they're witches' tongues. And you just kind of let your imagination run wild. So, long story short, it was my way of keeping hold of this artistic outlet that I needed to survive, I guess.
Oh, I love that stuff. The tongue is on my desk in the old quote unquote creative room, even though I'm not creative. I try to be enough to edit. That's me. So it's on my desk, and then I've got Mary Kelly's hair hung up on the wall. So I love it. If you would please plug that Etsy shop in case people want to check that out.
Sure. Just head over to Etsy.com and then search for the Rag and Bone Emporium, and that's in the letter N, not I-N. So it's Rag and Bone Emporium. Yeah,
you even have Vampire Hunter kit. It's incredible with the holy water, the crosses, and the stay. There's all kinds of goodies in there, guys. So go check that out. Now, before we, of course, plug Monsters Among Us podcast, we have to talk about something that is coming to my house today that I will be doing a video about, and it is something very close to your heart, and that is called the Cryptid Crate. And will you please tell people about this incredible box of goodies?
Sure. Now, if you're familiar with like Loot Crate or, any of these subscription boxes, forever I wanted to sign up for one. I'm like, I want Bigfoot stuff or, alien stuff or Mothman, whatever. I want it delivered to my house. And I searched and it didn't exist. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll do it. So, it's something I launched back in April. It's a box subscription company. You get a box a month. The flat rate is $39.99, which I realize is high, but I'm working on getting that down. but that is free shipping included. So what you get is $60 to $70 worth of cryptid or paranormal themed items delivered straight to your door once a month. So you get a t-shirt, DVDs, books. I try to get everything autographed that can be autographed, just to kind of add, a little extra something. One of your past guests, Lyle Blackburn, was kind enough to donate. Well, he didn't donate, I bought him off of him, but he was kind enough to autograph like 75 books or something like that for my very first Cryptid Crate. So, if you were a lucky subscriber of that, you got his autographed book, the Lizard Man book. So basically, you just sign up, and then once a month you get this box in the mail, and hopefully it makes your day, and if not month. And I'm a subscriber myself, because obviously that's the whole reason I started the company. So we're growing. This is our third shipment that just went out 2 days ago. So you should be getting yours today, I guess. Yeah,
and whenever people are listening to this, even if it's not on the quote-unquote live show for Thursday, you guys will, strike that. This is coming out following Thursday. So, go online right now and watch the unboxing video. I'm going to put it up on my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and it will be up on the IntoTheFrayRadio.com website as well. Make a blog post out of that so everyone can see what kinds of things come in this Cryptid Crate. I can't imagine the back work that kind of goes into it for you, even just tracking these items down. I would like to be a fly on the wall.
Well, it's a lot of fun, actually, because, there's stuff that I've been looking at for years that I think, one of these days I'm going to buy this. And then, a month will come up. I'm like, well, I'm starting to do themes now. This next box, the box for September, will have a theme, and I'm not ready to release that theme yet, but just think about festivals and you'll figure out what the theme is. But the fun part is, you kind of like put this stuff together. I'm like, well, this pairs well with that, and this T-shirt is just amazing. Everybody has to have his T-shirt, so you really get into it. You really, and working with these artists is just, something else. Like a lot of them are, fans of our shows, and just cryptid fans in general. So they're tickled pink to be included. So it's just fun, collaborating with all these authors, filmmakers, and especially T-shirt designers. That's my favorite part, is picking out the T-shirt.
Yeah, I have to say it's like being an automatic Prime member for Cryptid Crate, because it's $39.99 and the free shipping, which is incredible, because I'm sure a lot of those boxes are not very light. So if you're paying for shipping, and someone does, it's a really good deal, guys. So make sure to check that out. What's that website, Derek?
It's cryptidcrate.com. Yeah, and you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we sell a lot of the back boxes as well. So, if you didn't sign up and you want, for example, the box that you're about to open, if they want that, they can still, get certain sizes of that box. So, just head over to Facebook and you'll see how to do all that. Oh,
that's cool. I didn't realize that. So what about even the first box? That's still available?
The first box is sold out completely, so that one's gone. But I do have the second one and this recent one as well, so they'll both be up.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's an innovative idea, like you said, for somebody that was actually searching for the very thing, and you're like, well, damn it, I guess I'll do this myself.
Yeah, I just had to come up with that idea, didn't I?
So season 4 is upon us for Monsters Among Us podcast, and please call 888-608-NIGHT and leave your story with Derek. As I've said many times, every time he's on, I'll say it again, his format is very different than mine. His show is based on you guys taking that leap and calling in. There's no pressure. You can stay anonymous, just like on my show. I'm sure Derek is fine with that. But yeah, Derek, what do you have to say about, are you looking for more of this certain kind of story for this upcoming season, or what are your expectations?
Well, the best expectation is not to have any expectations. So,
very true.
Yeah, I'm just tickled to have anybody call in. And like I said at the close of my season 3 finale, it amazes me that people even listen to the show, let alone call in and share their time with me. So really, if you had an experience with anything from ghosts to, I've had doppelganger stories, I've had missing time stories, I've had a guy that found dimes all over his house and he had no idea how they were getting there. He lived alone, or he lived with his wife, and dimes would just show up everywhere, and they attributed it to his grandfather's ghost. So, any kind of strange story you have, share. You never know when it's going to spark something new. And I often tell people, if it's short, don't worry about it. Like, I'll take a short call any day, because you play that short call, and next thing you know, 3 other people hear that, and they're like, oh, I had something similar, and that snowballs into this whole other thing. So, I'll take any calls. But since you asked that question, Bigfoot, I'm 60 episodes into this, and I've had, I want to say 5 or 6 Bigfoot calls, which surprises me so much. And I realize there's a lot of Sasquatch Bigfoot shows out there that probably suck up a lot of those stories. But that's one thing I would like to hear more of, just for my personal entertainment. I really enjoy the Bigfoot stories. So if anybody has one of those they're sitting on, I'd appreciate that call.
You heard the call to action, guys. More biggie stories for Derek. Derek, did you hear me talking to Luke or see me post about Big Sur? We need to get up there.
Yes, yes.
About those
Big
shadow
Sur.
people. We can kill 2 birds with one stone. Shadow
Yes.
people and Bigfoot.
Yeah. Is there a lot of Bigfoot reports from that area? Yeah, I think there would be, wouldn't there?
I think there is, but the interesting thing is, I was being told about, like, there's a waiting list, or it's hard to get in the area or something. So
It is, yes. I actually did a camping trip there last year, and it took us a year in advance, to reserve a campground.
yeah, somebody else was saying that too, and I think it was Jared that was telling me that. He's like, oh, it's pretty tough to get up in that area. You better start looking at it now. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, you want to go on like a weekday. But the other issue is there was a rock slide that took out the highway, so it's very inaccessible right now. A lot of these campgrounds and hotels and stuff, so that's another added challenge to an already difficult situation.
Yeah, I was mentioning you to Luke, and I was like, oh, I have some people in that area, so I think we need to get up there and attempt at least something, a little group outing, and see what we come across. Would you rather, do you think, I think I know the answer, but if we go to mirrored men and then you take Bigfoot, which one do you think you would rather see with your own eyes and know that's what you saw?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I feel like I got to go with Bigfoot because, for almost 40 years now, that's been my life. Like, I've been obsessed with Bigfoot since well before it was cool. So if I had an opportunity to see a Sasquatch or, any of these Sasquattle animals, whatever you want to call them, I think I would go for that. As much as I'd love to see the mirrored men, or at least try to figure out what's going on, I got to go with Bigfoot on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because I think if you see, going off my encounter again, sorry guys, but I've already seen that, and I got to tell you, I have no clue what they are, where they came from, or anything, so I think that the mirrored men would kind of leave you like that. But if you saw a Bigfoot, I think you would have it a little bit closer to tie it into a box. Like, if you could say, okay, it was breathing, I could see its, breath, or it was carrying a rabbit, or it was stinky, or at least you could be like, okay, well, I saw a flesh and blood creature finally, that was pretty cool, and it stunk like hell, and it was breathing or sweating, and it would be, I'm sure it'd bring more questions, of course, but I think it might narrow things down a little bit more, because I'm the same as you. I think out of all of the things, even though I've seen the shadow folks myself, Bigfoot is definitely a big part of my life too, so I would definitely go with the Bigfoot as well. Yeah,
or Dogman. I'd love to see a Dogman in person. A lot of people talk about how terrifying that would be, but for me, I'd be like, this is awesome. I'd probably change my tune once it happened, but if I had to choose between Bigfoot and Dogman, I'd see a Dogman any day. It's so crazy. Just the thought of it even existing is so crazy. The thought of Bigfoot existing isn't that crazy. I mean, Gigantopithecus is out there, or was out there. There's fossil record for something similar to this, but Dogman, there's nothing outside of like Egyptian hieroglyphics. There's nothing that look anything like that. Well, I guess movies, you have your werewolves, but to see it in person, that's a whole nother deal.
That is a good point. I would have to say, because when I even, as you know, I say the word Dogman, and I just kind of want to giggle. So, but you can't call it a werewolf, because a werewolf changes from a human to the werewolf, the were creature. So A dog man is inherently always a dog man. I get that, guys. Everyone's like, don't call it a werewolf. I'm like, well, that's what I grew up on. So I'm like, what if I want to call it a werewolf, but I'm not saying that it freaking changes? How about that?
That's just a mouthful, then.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a mouthful. Yeah. So dog man's cool. It saves you time. But yeah, to see one of those things, except the stories that you hear of the sheer, absolute, utter terror that folks go through when they see one of those things. I'm like, oh. I think if you're in your car, I think the situation where D was in his car, and then it's like, because that was a situation where he's like, I heard the popping of the joints, and you're like, holy hell, no. But if you're deep in the woods, no.
Yeah. It's easy to say you want to see it, but I guess it depends on the situation. I wouldn't want to be confronted, with no escape, 8-foot dog creature thing.
It's funny when people are out hunting and they have like massive guns that could, maybe not take down an elephant, but damn near close. And they're like, there's no way I was going to pop a shot off because it would have just pissed it off. And you're like,
Yeah.
What? What do you mean it would just piss it? What are you talking about? There was this story, I want to say it was 4 or 5 years ago. I heard on a podcast. I don't know which one. I don't know her name. I don't know where it was. And I want to say, I'm not sure, but I think it was debunked. But this is one of the most scary stories I've ever heard. It was some gal that had gone down a hill to go do some damn thing down in the woods. And there was a dog man like stalking her, and she's like climbing or clawing the way back up the hill, and the dad comes out with a gun. And obviously I've forgotten much of the story that makes it creepy. I'm sorry, guys, but it was one of the creepiest stories I've ever heard. And I hope that's not the one that I heard was just blown out of the water, that the lady was making the whole thing up. But yeah, those dog men, man, they're always pissed off. I just don't know why.
Yeah, they seem hyper aggressive, don't they?
Yeah, they have their hairs in a bunch for some reason. Bigfoot are so much more laid back for the most part.
Unless you go down to the south, Texas or the Ozarks or anything like that, those guys seem to be kind of ornery.
Yeah, who can blame them though? Freaking humidity, man, it'll kill anybody. Mosquitoes and
Ooh.
Yeah, if you start getting bit up by skeeters and you're freaking hot as hell because it's 100 degrees with 90% humidity, yeah, you're like, I'm pissed off too.
I guess that explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, this poor Florida Bigfoot, man. I always say it's like, no wonder they stink. They're always in the water cooling off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Stinky swamp water as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of the places you just walk down there and it's real, it's stagnant water. It doesn't smell very good, and it's a good place to get malaria anyway, so I'm sure they're diving in there any chance they get. Well, where can folks find the Monsters Among Us podcast?
Well, you can find the show on iTunes and Stitcher and pretty much any podcatcher that I've heard of. You can also go to the website and listen to a lot of the back episodes that aren't, on iTunes, which is monstersamonguspodcast.com, and just click on the episodes tab. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well if you want to get in there and follow us. Me. I guess it's me.
Yeah, you're me and my dark passenger. The editing
sounds
gnome.
better, but it's just me.
Yeah, that's all right. I do that too. I'm like, well, I kind of do all the behind the scenes too, so I guess it's not us. Well, yeah. Derek, thank you so much for coming on and sharing these incredible calls. And guys, make sure to check out Monsters Among Us podcast. And I think that you and I should maybe, just off the cuff here, place a little bet on how long it takes for the next Mirrored Men story to come in. And I think it will be season 4, but I'm just wondering if we could just throw it out there. How long do you think it might take, throwing that fishing line out there and getting that bite?
If I were a gambling man, I'd say by the 5th episode of this season, I'll have a call in.
Nice. I was actually thinking by the 8th episode, so I like that. Yeah, we're thinking it'll happen quite
early
quickly.
On.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this, that your show's going to help, somebody out there listening be like, oh, shit, I saw the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I want to touch on something you said really quickly and just hammer that home. And I think that people think the same thing about my show, too. If you feel like your story is too short, it's not. Even if you call his line and it's 2 minutes because that's all that happened, well, great. You don't have to embellish anything, but that's all that it takes to get the word out there. And maybe there's 5 other people that have heard that, and they're all over the world, maybe sometimes even, and they're going to call Derek, and they're going to have the same experience. So it's all just about throwing that line out there, guys. So don't be embarrassed if you feel like, it doesn't take very long to tell the story, so I'm not going to call it in. Definitely call it in.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And very last time, Derek, shout out that hotline number.
It's 1-888-608-NIGHT.
And it's nice to hear you do that in person, by the way, because I hear you do that on your show.
Yeah, it's like
that nice deep voice of yours.
Reminds me it just clicks out of my mouth and my head every time. It just, I don't know. It's repetitive.
Just mental diarrhea. I do the same thing. I'm like, InTheFrayRadio.com. It's iTunes, Stitcher. By the way, are we supposed to be saying Apple Podcasts now?
Oh, I'm not going to do that.
Me neither. Who's got time for that? I still do hashtag iTunes. Everyone's like, oh, you better put hashtag Apple Podcasts. I'm like, oh, for God's sake. I'm just now learning all this hashtag BS right now anyway. Don't push it.
Yeah, they'll find it. If they want to find it, the universe will send it to them. That's right. How I look at it.
When someone asks me a stupid question, I'm like, am I freaking Google? You have Google, son.
There's actually a site where you can type in, let me Google that for you, and it sends them Google. I'll have to find that, send it to you. It's pretty great.
Oh, I will use that all day, because someone asks me something, and I'm like, what? Do I sit around looking crap up for people? What is this? No, I'm just kidding. I love everyone all the time.
By the way, this is off topic, but I wanted to congratulate you. I believe it was 700,000 downloads you achieved the other day.
Actually, the top number was the U.S. downloads was like 700,000 something, but the total downloads is like, I'm shocked. It's insane. It's like at 980 something thousand.
Oh,
right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, I still can't believe it. When you said you can't believe anyone listens, I feel the same way. I'm like, I don't know why anyone wants to listen to me speak. So that's a huge thanks to everybody out there, and you, Derek, of course, for, going on shows like yours also just helps get the word out. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, you help each other out. That's the only way we're going to grow, expand, and reach new audiences. And anybody that thinks otherwise is crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like I think you said before, it's a big pond, and there's plenty of listeners out there. So why not just scratch each other's backs?
Yeah. In fact, the Dogman call the Devil Dog call from earlier. I believe Kevin, I got him from your show when I did episode 72. I think he actually mentioned that in the call, if I remember right.
Yeah, he sure did, which was cool to hear. I forgot that he said that. Yeah, he goes, oh, I heard about you from Into the Fray. So that's good. That's what I like to hear. That's the point of me. Not only just, even if you're not even on, if I can just mention Cryptid Crate or something cool that happened and it ties into your show, that's what I want, is because there's no reason for me to think that all of my listeners should only listen to my show. That's asinine. I probably have maybe 40 podcasts on my Apple Podcast, iTunes, and my on my app. So, and by the way, I get emails every once in a while about, Stitcher's not updating and blah, blah. Guys, I don't own Stitcher. I don't know if you guys know that, but I can't really do anything about them not updating. I personally do not use Stitcher. I don't find them to be very reliable. I love my iPhone because I do have the podcast app, which is an amazing app. So for anybody that's frustrated with another podcatcher, if they don't like it, if you do have the iPhone, darn it, use that podcast app, because I almost never have any problems with that. So I just had to throw that out there really quickly.
I'm in the same boat. I don't do much with Stitcher as well. I have my feed go there and I kind of let it go.
It seems like it's kind of it's like the MySpace of the day.
It's definitely the MySpace, yeah.
It's just slowly going away, which I keep hearing Twitter is going to die, and I really hope it does.
I don't use Twitter.
I hate Twitter.
Yeah, I don't. I post to it, but I don't use it.
Yeah.
So if I don't like anything on Twitter, guys, it's not because I don't like you. It's because I have no idea how to use Twitter.
Yeah, it's hashtag hell. It's just I love Vince Vaughn, and he the movie Couples Retreat, he calls it twatter. So when I call it twatter online, guys, I know I typed that. It's not a typo. I'm just going after Vince Vaughn, what he said. He's like, what? I call it twatting. It's twatter. So there you go. I hope death to Twitter. I'm sorry, but yeah, Facebook's all about all I can keep up with. And even then I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all the notifications. So But
Yeah.
love the interaction. We have to have it. Derek and I have to be present on the web, so to speak. So
Yeah, got to make it look like you're out there.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I'm half asleep watching TV, I'm replying to Instagram posts or something,
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to feel left out. So.
No, of course
And
not.
speaking of left out, when I do get that Mirrored Men call, I'm going to have you on. We're going to do that call together.
Oh my gosh, I would be honored to do that. That would be amazing. And we'll see if you're 5 or my 8. Eight's my lucky number. 8880 is the old birthday, so I just thought, it'll definitely be 8 or below. But I like that you're like, hell no, it's going to be episode 5. I love it.
Well, you watch, it'll be episode 1 now because we're talking about it. But.
I do hope so, and I hope that the fact that I wanted to leave the Mirrored Men for last because that's one of my favorite subjects I've ever even heard of. And I've listened to a lot of paranormal shows, and that is such an interesting phenomena. So I hope that throwing that line out there to the End of the Fray radio listeners, to the full extent of them hearing an entire encounter, instead of just mentioning the Mirrored Men and what they do, hearing that guy tell his encounter, it should drive that home, and maybe we